We now join the Untitled Beatles Podcast deep dish into the film A Hard Day's Night, already in progress. And truthfully, like 2 cocktails in.
Untitled Beatles Podcast. All right, so we get this press conference scene, which is one of the more celebrated scenes in the whole film. This was improvised. This was not in the script. This is because something they wanted to do exterior, they couldn't do it because of crowd control. And so, all right, we're going to shoot something indoors. This is based on their press grind and the junket and people asking them inane questions over and over again and their playfulness with it.
Tony, you said they couldn't do it because of crowd control. I thought they couldn't do it because of Paw Patrol.
Paw Patrol, we'll be there on the double.
Right, and I thought they couldn't do it because of Moon Patrol, my favorite coin-op arcade game. Play that theme. The fucking music for Moon Patrol fucking rules. It's funky.
I thought they couldn't do it because of Snow Patrol, mid-2000s easy listening pop band.
Easy listening.
If I lay here, if I just lay here.
Snow Patrol is the 2000s version of like England Dan and Country Joe or whatever those guys were.
I'm not talking about moving in. Good, you're a creep.
I want to change your life, but there's a warm wind blowing the stars around, and I'd really love to see it tonight.
But it's great, right? So this
Yes.
press conference it's great. It's them like, oh, he's trying to grab a pint. They take the pint away. They're trying to grab a nice mixed drink. They can't catch a break. It's all these dumb quotes. No hors d'oeuvres for you, Beatles. Didn't even get a jam buddy.
Didn't even get a jam butty, did you?
Although later Ringo got a stale sandwich that was made this morning. No, Tony, this is arguably the most important scene of the film where they're satirizing and improvising the inane questions that they're asked. And part of the reason the Beatles were so beloved when they came to JFK was that initial press conference. When did you get your last haircut? George goes, I had one yesterday.
Got one yesterday.
All that stuff inspired this. Turn left at Greenland. I'm a mocker. What are your hobbies? John scribbles something dirty. We're just good friends, that Paul runner.
No, actually, we're just good friends.
What do you call your haircut? George says Arthur, and that's where Christopher Cross wrote his hit from.
I think that won an Academy Award.
I totally think it did, right? The woman says, what do you call that collar? Ringo goes, a collar.
A collar.
Oh. And I love Ringo's innocent laugh when she goes, how do you like your girlfriends to dress? Because that was part of it too, Tony. To your point, everything revolved around sex. And that was a true moment where all of a sudden this reporter is flirting with Ringo and says something suggestive and Ringo doesn't know how to act.
How do you like your girlfriends to dress?
That's organic and unscripted and a real moment of what they went through, where at every moment women were throwing themselves at the Beatles. I love the group mind eye contact moment. One of my favorite things when they all look at each other to get the fuck out of there and they lift up Ringo and go. It's a great Beatle moment. Those are the little moments Dick Lester did so right by showing them as a unified force that really carried an improv ethos of the whole early Beatles ethos. Tony, forgive the improv cheesiness, is I've got your back. I've got your back. That's how the Beatles operated.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And I believe like that eye look thing had to be real. That is how they had to communicate when they were in these situations. If 100%. They were ever in these type of situations where they weren't a unit. I love that. Yeah. The unspoken communication.
Who's a better unit to you? The Beatles or Randy Johnson? Who is the big unit?
Well, again, like I love Moon Patrol. Moon Unit Zappa is my favorite unit of measure, by the way. Valley Girl, anybody? Gag me with a spoon, TJ.
The Valley Girl.
It's like totally disgusting. I'm like so sure. It's like, barf me out. Gag me with a spoon.
Now we get to finally go to the rehearsal. This is great. We get to see the Beatles like with instruments. You know, we kind of saw it on the train, but I always love seeing the Beatles with their instruments in the, the context of what they're doing, the rock and roll. I want to see the amps. I want to see the drum kit. you know? So, yeah, we're at, I want to say it was Scala Theater, right? I think that's where they filmed the stage stuff, but I
think so. The last concert was, yeah.
Okay, great. Wonderful. So this is where that's filmed. Ringo gets into it with a stagehand, which is very funny, who wants to, like, touch his drums or whatever.
It's so funny. Ringo's so sensitive.
Leave them drums alone.
Oh, surely I could just have a little touch.
You so much as breathe heavy on them and I'm out on strike.
Aren't you being rather arbitrary?
There you go, hiding behind a smokescreen of bourgeois cliches. I don't go messing about with your earphones, do I?
One of my favorite lines in the movie is George's line.
He's very fussy about his drums, you know. They loom large in his legend.
Loom large in his legend. And before that, I love when the camera hand goes, spoil sport.
Spoil sport.
Yeah, it's good. Good shit. Good shit. Yeah. I want to say that character is kind of the stage manager, right? The guy walking around.
Yeah,
with the glasses.
He's the Kevin Harrington of A Hard Day's Night.
The redheaded kid on the roof.
All right.
Yeah, yeah. So that's fun. And it goes right into one of my favorite songs of all time. It's the top 10, If I Fell.
If I fell in love with you, would you promise to be true and help me understand?
In mono, in a slower tempo.
Yeah, yes,
It's slowed down too much. That's the only thing that keeps you from... This is 4.9 Fabs because the different tempos and keys hurt my musical ears and always have. There's no more Beatle joy, my dear friend Tony Mendoza, than the Hard Day's Night movie and soundtrack. 5 fucking Fabs. File under Oscar worthy. I wasn't sure if it was a VH. Maybe I got a bad VHS tape.
Right.
But no, they're all slower. Yeah.
Yeah, the songs are strangely slower at times, and this is one of them. I find it to be interesting because, yeah, it's just a different way to hear it to me. And sometimes I like hearing things a little slower. I'll take it slower over faster, to be quite honest.
I like fast, quick, over, and sleep. Maybe 10 minutes of Sports Center. We'll be right back.
Hi again, Sports Center, about to drop bowls on them with Dan Patrick. I'm Stuart Scott.
Coming up on the program.
Now, what's funny is that the boys had a hard time keeping a straight face when they recorded this, because this is a wonderful John Lennon love song, you know, and it's a sad ballad too. We'll get into the song when we get into the albums and all that, but yeah, it wasn't a song he wrote for Ringo to sing to Ringo. But
it's very funny.
Pardon. I'd like more drums there.
No, I think it's on that.
It sounds like a
on the other
cover,
bit. Where you
right
got on the third bit. You know, on the third bit.
Okay. More bang.
It's just great to see the Beatles performing a version of If I Fell. You know, this song fell out of their repertoire shortly thereafter, after the 64 tour. They did play it often on their 64 tour, which spoke to how proud they were of this complex, seemingly simple but complex song.
It is a complex song, and as we've said on the show many times, and we're going to get to this with End, I love her. I much prefer the mono solo tracked verse. I think it is wonderful.
Oh, yeah. That's kind of the only way to listen to it. Yeah. The double tracking is messy and all that. But yeah. This is also where we meet Victor Spinetti. We finally get to see him. He's playing the director of this big TV show. This is where the story is. It's a snapshot of the Beatles' life. They are running from girls, and they're showing up to dates that Brian Epstein had booked for them. So that's the deal. They're rehearsing for the songs. Victor Spinetti in this very fuzzy V-neck sweater. He comes off as pretentious.
So funny.
Now look. If you think I'm unsuitable, let's have it out in the open. I can't stand these backstage politics.
Aren't you turning to black and white the situation somewhat?
Well, quite honestly, I wasn't expecting a musical arranger to question my ability picture-wise.
He's great. He is great. Yeah, Paul referred to Victor as the man who makes clouds disappear.
He's got a great sense of fun. And he's no nonsense. That's what I love about Victor. You know, bollocks, don't listen to them. And that was good for us, because we were coming into the business looking around, looking to see, what we should do, who we should listen to, who we didn't need to listen to. And I think he steered us very well on that.
All right, so then the boys escape, and this is where the film opens up. They escape. They're in broad daylight. They get to be free, and you hear the song Can't Buy Me Love.
Can't buy me love, love, can't buy me love.
A song that was familiar already. This was a choice Dick Lester made. Originally, it was supposed to be, I think, I'll Cry Instead.
It
here,
was,
right?
and it was cut when Can't Buy Me Love was written, and that was originally written and recorded in Paris.
Yeah, it was already out. This song was, I think, I don't know if it was out while they were filming. I forget the chronology, but this song would have been familiar. It was not a new song for the film. It was out already. And the point is, it was an upbeat song. Dick Lester liked it because it was yippee, whereas I'll Cry Instead was downbeat. The lyrics were kind of sad, and this is supposed to be them being joyous.
Well, Tony, you did skirt one of my favorite comedy moments of the film since I've been a kid, which is where Grandpa goes up to Leslie Jackson and his 10 disappearing doves and says,
Leslie Jackson, I saw your father in the old Empire in 1909. If you're as good as him, son, you're all right.
Smacks him on the arm. You see feathers fall out, and Leslie Jackson crosses out 10, and it's 9 disappearing doves. It's such a funny, old school Jack Benny-esque bit. I love it.
Yes, I did forget about that.
I know you forgot.
So then we go to Can't Buy Me Love?
Well, then you go to Can't Buy Me Love, but first there's a moment with John with a man backstage who looks at John and goes, cheeky.
Cheeky.
And I believe that was the first ever appearance by Monroe from Too Close for Comfort.
Jim J. Bullock, forever center square when Shadow Stevens is not available.
I mean, I absolutely love this. And Tony, the iconic words, Ringo screaming, "We're out."
We're out!
And then opening the door, going to the fire escape for Can't Buy Me Love. It is arguably one of the best moments in the history of movie musicals. It is authentic. It is vibrant. It is energetic. It is young. It is freeing. That Can't Buy Me Love moment when they start running around the airfield is incredible. It's iconic.
Yeah, man. Yeah, so that's at Thornbury Playing Fields in Isleworth, by the way, if you want to visit it. Put that on your itinerary, your Hard Day's Night tour.
We got to do that.
That would be fun. I mean,
the UBP Hard Day's Night tour, sure.
I love that shit. I like going to where things were done.
Yeah.
That's a thing I like doing. Yeah, man. Yeah. Helicopter shots. We get some undercranking, meaning a low frame rate, something below 24 frames a second. We get some overcranking, that slow motion, high frame rate, things that are way more than 24 frames per second. It's great. It is. This is basically the first music video. We talked about that. There's a lot of like violent Three Stooges kind of bits.
With Ringo's constantly getting punched out. And then he's like, no, fuck y'all.
Yeah. And then, trivia, John wasn't there for some of these bits.
Yes, that's why there's just 3 of them. It's the original Threedles. This scene is the first. It's the first Free as a fuck you, Free as a Bird.
Can't Buy Me Love is the first Threedles song. Deal with it.
I'll buy you a diamond ring, my friend, if it makes you feel alright.
Yeah, it is such an exuberant scene, Tony. And in addition to being iconic, one of the great things about this afterwards is when the guy runs up, there's a class warfare thing and an age warfare thing to end the scene. When the guy in like a military getup who owns the field says,
I suppose you realize this is private property.
And George says,
sorry we at your field, mister.
Which is such a great, forgive the obviousness of this thought, Tony. I know people will roll their eyes when they hear me say this. There's no monkeys without a Hard Day's Night.
Well, yeah.
This scene in particular is a launch pad of the Monkees.
Yeah. I would say in recent years, people have come to respect the Monkees. Whereas in the 80s and et cetera, they were kind of a joke. Like, oh, they're trying to be the Beatles. They're not as good. But there's some great comedy in the Monkees and some really fun, inventive, similarly, sight gag city. Yeah, a lot of people love the Monkees. For sure. And some people love the Monkees more than the Beatles.
I know a couple of them who do. We have some improv friends who do. We shall remain nameless. Yeah.
Who shall remain nameless.
I want to implicate them. And Tony, in that moment with the farmer/airfield owner, that's where Ringo was inspired to sing about private property. Don't go knocking it.
Which he doesn't say. We got the lyrics.
I feel like he does.
He doesn't say that.
Don't go knocking it. You'll be breaking the law.
Private property, don't run off with it. You'll be breaking the law.
All right, moving on. We get a Norman Shake scene. They get a solo scene without the Beatles. And then there's a wonderful Mal Evans cameo.
Yes.
So I don't know how wonderful it is, but, sharp, eagle-eyed viewers can see Mal Evans carrying a cello briefly in a hallway. And this now leads into one of my favorite scenes. I love this scene with Anna Quayle. She plays this woman who thinks she's seeing John Lennon and then decides that, oh, no, you don't like the wordplay on this is magnificent. This is one of the most brilliantly written scenes in the film.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, wait a minute. Don't
No, I'm
you
not.
know. Oh, you are.
I'm not.
Oh, you are. I know you are.
I'm not, no.
You look just like him.
Do I? You're the first one that said that ever.
Yes, you do. Look.
No, my eyes are lighter. All right, Noddy.
Oh,
My nose.
Yes, your nose is very.
Is it?
Well, I would have said so.
Oh, you know him better, though.
I do not. He's only a casual acquaintance.
That's what you say.
It feels like an Aaron Sorkin moment. It's written with that kind of, other than the cocaine, which John does earlier in the Coke scene.
Right.
It is a wonderful two-person scene that has a believable turn at the end, and the last glimpse of John, Richard Lester just captures the light of John in the hallway going a little bit dark as John's walking away in the hallway. It is everything about the scene, both the scripting, the acting, and the cinematography. It is a classic and important scene. This is the one, much like Ringo for overrated reasons in This Boy / Ringo's theme, this is the one that made people think, oh, wow, John's an actor. Without this scene, there's no How I Won the War.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
Back to back with the mistaken identity scene goes George on his own excursion into this fashion office for like a look-see. This is another one of my favorite scenes. A, because it's funny, and then B, because it's titillating. There's that secretary or receptionist, excuse me, whatever the term is. George arrives and she starts putting on high heels in this like seductive way. It's so vanilla tame, but there's something underneath it that like, yeah, it's sex, man. It's wild.
Now, there you are.
Oh, sorry, must have made a mistake.
No, you haven't. You're just late.
Oh?
Actually, I think he'd be very pleased with you.
Really?
Yes, you're quite a feather in the cap. Hello? I've got one. Oh, I think so. Yes, he can talk. No, well, I think you ought to see him.
Yeah, Tony, this is probably my favorite scene. The actor who plays the trendsetter, I'm forgetting his name right now.
Hi, it's Casey. The role of Simon was played by Kenneth Haig.
He is an established British actor who is phenomenal.
He's a stage actor, yeah.
Yes.
Now, you'll like these. You'll really dig them. They're fab and all the other pimply hyperboles.
I wouldn't be seeing Dad in them. The dead grotty.
Grotty?
Yeah, grotesque.
Make a note of that word and give it to Susan.
George himself is phenomenal in this, and there are so many jokes. The assistant should get an Oscar, because one of my favorite moments in this is when the assistant starts to mouth to the trendsetter, that's George Harrison, and the guy will have nothing to do with it. Then when the assistant hands George the shirts, the look in his eyes is one of, I know who you are and I'm so sorry. And it is a tremendous acting moment. I'm very serious. I replayed this many times. Watch when he hands George the 2 grotty shirts. The look in his eyes is, I know who you are and I'm sorry. And it's a great subtle acting moment. It is.
I agree. No, I'm laughing because of the grotty thing. That was a thing that was, they talk about it in the that Phil Collins documentary from '94. How George was not familiar with that term, but it was a Liverpudlian term for grotesque.
So I took the word grotty, and George hadn't even heard of it, as I say, and I used it, and it suddenly, eventually, one wound up with Princess Margaret at the reception saying, where's this wonderful word grotty come from?
I don't know. I thought it just sounded distinguished, like.
But yeah, this is to me one of the great satiric moments in the film. Yeah, I love like George picking on like their spokesmodel for whatever they're selling in this office, and oh yeah, we turn the sound down and say nasty things or whatever.
Oh yeah, the lads frequently sit round the television and watch her for a giggle. In fact, once we all sat down, wrote these letters saying how gear she was and all that rubbish.
She's a trendsetter. It's her profession.
She's a drag, a well-known drag. We turn the sound down on her and say rude things.
Get him out of here.
Have I said something amiss?
Get him out.
And Tony, you and I are both, in many respects, are both alt comedy guys. We love Mr. Show. We love SCTV.
Right.
One of the great moments of comedy acting and directing in this scene and editing, and I think is so brilliant, is right when our guy says, make a note not to extend Susan's contract. Let's not take any chances. He looks in the camera and goes,
right. And breaking the fourth wall.
Breaking the fourth wall, and then it cuts immediately. And Tony, it is brilliant comedic editing and filmmaking. That moment alone that shows his weird self-importance and quest for validation, and then bang, it's almost like proto the British Office in the early millennium.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Where it's an awkward moment, and then before you can delve too deeply, it's over. I think it is a stunning comedic moment in this film.
Totally. Yeah. So then Grandpa sneaks into the basement and he starts forging these Beatle autographs on these like 8x10 glossies, which that'll come into play later. But yeah, that's his scheme, you know, because he's a mixer.
A real mixer.
And then he ends up like on, you know, he's in the basement and he ends up on this kind of Dragon's Lair rig.
Opera stage. It's so funny. It's a Flintstones Tennessee Tuxedo bit, and it works.
Yeah, he pops onto stage during this very serious, you know, like, again, poking fun at the old guard because, like, oh, that's art. These people dressed as, you know, they're gooned up kind of comedy sports style in these Viking outfits or whatever the fuck it is, right? But they're lampooning like the old guard's idea of what is proper art. And it's a great send up and it's a great bit, and we'll provide a callback for later as well. So they're setting up some cool shit right here.
It's pretty funny. It's surrealist. There's a few mini surrealist moments. There's a lot of stunning comedy in this film, especially for 1964, Tony.
Yeah, they're playing with the medium. Visual arts and film and TV and this and that are still a relatively new medium, and they are having fun with it, especially with the way like zoom lenses will, you know, start tight and then like snap wide to reveal what's really going on or the truth or whatever. There's something that's real fun and telescopic binoculars, voyeuristic haha about it.
Yes, and Tony, to that point, with all due respect to Elvis, the fact that the Beatles didn't have a Colonel Parker, the fact that Brian Epstein and George Martin were opportunistic and open-minded, and the Beatles shared those same traits, it led to all this stuff. The Beatles story really, God, kill me for the improv. I love improv. It's been wonderful to me, and I never want to be part of it again simultaneously. But what I will say to you
Go
is...
see the Blank the Musical.
Hey, if you're in the Chicago area.
You know, TJ is oddly far too modest to promote this, so allow me. Hey, Chicagoland! Check out Blank the Musical, the hit improv musical co-created by T.J. Shanoff, playing now at The Revival. Carrie Reed of the Chicago Reader says, the well-honed concept and absolutely rock-solid chops of the players ensure that you'll probably have a blast. Tickets and more at the-revival.com.
The Beatles were allowed and encouraged to be funny and to be themselves. And God help me, Tony, you've been in entertainment for 30, 40 years too. That's the aberration. That's not the rule.
Yeah.
Letting creatives be themselves tends to be the exception to the rule. And the Beatles led with that ethos, and all they did was brilliance.
Well, let me say this, though. Let me say this. Speaking about their management, Brian Epstein was technically very green. He wasn't a Colonel Parker, and he wasn't an Alan Klein. If they had had someone that was more savvy as their manager and got them better deals, I don't think the art would have been as good. But because Brian Epstein was more of an artist himself, maybe like a failed artist, if you want to call him that, he believed in the art over the money, and that's maybe why the Beatles didn't get such a good deal, in their years monetarily. But fuck, for that, we get such a greater echelon of art.
Yes, and George Martin believed in the same things. George Martin was not a quote-unquote producer for hire. He was a comedy and classical and orchestral and show tune producer whose ideas melded with the Beatles in terms of theatricality and open-mindedness. The Beatles are more rock. George Martin was more comedy and show tune and classical, but their ability to meld with each other could not have, because it was all rooted in open-mindedness. It is a lesson in a good way to live your life, Tony, by being open and not being intransigent with your arms folded and saying, we can't do this, but rather saying, what can we do with this idea? That's all the Beatles did.
Yes, and, right? I mean, you just described the ethos of improv, and that's why we met and how we met. And we still share that thing.
Dude, I thought he was in a band. I didn't know this was going to be like an improv show.
But let me say this, man. Let me say this. I'm going to give away one of my secrets as a script supervisor, as someone who works below the line, behind the scenes in the film industry.
On the hit TV show The Bear, by the way.
On the hit TV show The Bear, and many commercials, and also a great show that was on Showtime called Work in Progress, starring fellow improviser Abby McEnany. My job as a script supervisor is continuity, and it's keeping track of everything, shit like first shot, what's on the slate, what hand was the drink in, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of my job is about being the fucking hall monitor, and people hate the fucking hall monitor because they want to do the fucking art. And it's like, well, I need to make the art to make sense. If there's if they're wearing the wrong shirt in the thing or whatever, then that's going to take the viewer out of it. They're going to start talking about the fucking shirt. And anyway, my point is that I think I have succeeded in this behind the scenes world because I come from improv. I have an improvisational spirit. And when the director has a vision, I have a way of being able to say, instead of like, well, that's not going to work. I just say like, hey, information, this is the information. The drink was in this hand. And if it's important, they'll move it to the hand. But if it's not important, they'll just say like, whatever, and I won't flip out about it and start getting into arguments about eye lines and blah blah blah. I'm ready to roll with, oh, we're gonna improvise a scene. It doesn't have a script. Cool, I love it. I'm gonna write it down, as opposed to like, oh, now what am I gonna do? I can't. This is not in the script. Oh, and holding up production. I just roll with it, man. We return to the movie, and we get our second rehearsal. This is a wonderful moment in another music video. It's a ballad time yet again, this time from Paul, and I Love Her.
I give her all my love, that's all I do.
I love this. I love this. I also love how George hugs the guitar in the first verse after playing the iconic 4-note riff.
Which belongs to him, but Tony, it's in a lower key. I can't take it. It hurts my heart. I love this film, but you'd think on the Criterion DVD they'd fucking pitch correct.
That is an interesting choice because they could have done that. You're right. And it wouldn't make the Beatles look sped up, I think. I think it would make it look normal as well, right?
Yeah. And no, this is wonderful. It's also Paul doing single tracked in mono. Yeah. Even in the stereo version of the Criterion, it's proof that they want you to hear If I Fell and I Lump Her with single tracked mono for the verses.
Yeah, man. It's cool. And another little fun detail is like they get really in there on the acoustic guitar George is playing, and you can see the words Ramirez and Madrid. So it's one of his classical guitars he's playing there.
It's lovely. And one thing I don't love that follows this, Tony, help me with this. We've talked about happiness as a warm gun and how it affects me.
Yes.
At one point, Norm says,
John, behave yourself or I'll murder you.
And I do have to admit that strikes me difficultly knowing how John left us. I'm just being honest with you. That's a line that still kind of hurts my heart. Maybe that's just me being stupid, but it does.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it was written before, you know what I mean? Yeah, the context is
16 years beforehand, obviously.
Yeah. Well, the thing I find interesting in the dressing room, we get the Beatles doing these beard and wig bits. So we've been talking about improv, nod to comedy sports, inspired comedy sports right there. The Beatles invented comedy sports right there.
And Pinata Full of Bees, where all the props are on stage.
Well, you just seen Pinata Full of Bees, our 80th review. We're going to improvise for you this evening.
A notable line, a very quotable line, a line that comes from reality is Grandpa saying,
I thought I was supposed to be getting a change of scenery, and so far I've been in a train and a room, and a car and a room, and a room and a room.
And he acts it so well. His delivery of that is on point.
Yeah. Yeah, and that speaks to the reality of the Beatles' lives.
Their confinement, Tony.
Yeah.
There's a few moments in this thing I do love. Happy Just to Dance With You as the easy listening tap dance.
It's fun. It's a fun, and it feels improvised. It's totally fun. Yeah, and so that leads to the actual version of I'm Happy Just to Dance With You. Exactly. You know, again, pitched down about half a step or so.
I hate it.
I love it.
Before this dance is through, I think I love you too. I'm so happy when you dance with me.
But Tony, it's one of my favorite Beatles songs. I know John and Paul wrote it for George.
Yeah.
On the documentary DVD, George Martin talks about not loving this song. Forgive me, Beatle idiot. I love I'm Happy Just to Dance With You. I think it's great.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. It's the one.
Me too.
Those guys gave it to George. It's a great song. There's too many chords. We'll go into it more later when we go through the albums, but it's great to see them visually doing this again. Yeah. And again, without like screaming noise interrupting it or affecting the treble in your listening experience. John's playing his Rickenbacker 325. George's on the Gibson Jumbo. It's fun, man. It's fun. And that's what the whole idea of this movie is. Fucking fun. Then we get another fun scene. This is a great scene between Ringo and Grandpa in the canteen.
Yep.
Ringo's trying to get his quiet time, so he's reading a book. He's reading Anatomy of Murder, a 1958 bestseller. And Grandpa's chiding him.
When was the last time you gave a girl a pink-edged daisy? When did you last embarrass a Sheila with your cool, appraising stare?
Bit old for that sort of chat, aren't you?
Well, at least I've got a backlog of memories. All you've got is that book.
Oh, stop picking on me as bad as the rest of them.
Again, this is in the canteen at the studio, so there's all sorts of people, you know, actors in costume milling about. You made reference to this earlier, but I wanted to bring it up again. I just love that bit. It's a guy who's in, you know, some war, and he's got a wound, and he's got a bottle of ketchup, and he adds some more ketchup to the wound. That, to me, is it's a fun little one-off. These are great little fun, you know, it also inspired things like fucking Airplane.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Another great visual gag movie.
2 more minutes. They could be miles off course. That's impossible. They're on instruments.
So Grandpa is chiding Ringo about, you know, going out there and parading. He keeps saying, go out there and, you know, mix it up. In other words, there is a great bit with the sugar in his coffee. He keeps searching for sugar and he can't get coffee. By the time he finds sugar, his coffee's gone. It's a fun bit. it's another fun bit, put into this other message that does inspire Ringo to put down the book and go out on Ringo's Mad Day Out, which is one of the most iconic bits in the film, right?
Yes, thanks to George Martin's scoring.
It's Ringo's Mad Day Out. He finds like a thrift store where he buys a coat. There's a fun little quick cut there. It's a disguise, basically, so he can go and just be Ringo. And he looks a bit like a ragamuffin. He looks a bit like a hobo. And that's why I'm going to call her a young woman as opposed to like a girl, tells him to buzz off.
Hello there. Get out of it, Shorty.
Now, the boy he does run into, like a tire hits him or whatever the fuck happens, that's a 10-year-old character played by David Janson.
How old are you anyway?
11?
I bet you're only 10 and a half.
10 and 2/3.
There you are, then, and don't be rolling with people.
Oh, you can have it. I'm packing it in. It depresses me.
You are?
You heard? It gets on my wick.
I love this. This is a sweet moment. It's Ringo, who basically has this childlike wonder about him, hanging out with a child, and them both kind of playing hooky from their lives. And one of my favorite bits is, Ringo's asking this kid about his life, and he's got a friend named Ding Dong.
Ding Dong. 3, 4. Ding Dong, Ding Dong.
And we learn that Ding Dong is a bigot, but that's all right because he's one of the gang.
Yeah.
So, this kid's got yet to get woke. He's got to tell Ding Dong it's not cool to be a bigot. But again, times will come around.
Agreed that times will come around. Agreed that it's not cool to be a bigot. However, the way I hear it, this kid isn't calling Ding Dong a bigot, but rather a big head who fancies himself. I'll let you decide.
Yeah, how about Ding Dong?
Oh, he's a big head. He fancies himself. It's all right, though, because he's one of the gang.
Trivia, we've got a cameo from Rooney Massara, who is a professional rower. That's who that rower is in the middle of that segment that kind of breaks up the Ringo and the child. Ringo hanging out with a 10-year-old scene.
The original Rupert and the Bear is Ringo and the Child. Why wasn't that a tune in Liverpool Oratorios?
Then Ringo's in a pub. I love the pub bit. That's the Turk's Head Pub in Twickenham.
Tony, before we get to this, I got a bit. So 3, 2, 1. Yeah, Tony, and Ringo's on a boat. 3, 2, 1. Tony, Ringo's looking at the river. I feel like this is a prelude to Eleanor's Dream from Broad Street with Ringo by a river and it's Victorian and everyone dies and it's 18 minutes long and Linda kind of acts and it's just a terrible thing. So what do you think is better? Let's call this out. Broad Street or Hard Day's Night?
Oh, Broad Street.
Me
100%.
too.
Well, then we're at the pub. One of my favorite scenes in this film. Now, TJ, this is the Turk's Head Pub, which is in Twickenham, so it's near the studios there. But it's a fun bit. I love that he's like, he's fucking everybody's shit up. He's a mixer, and he doesn't even want to be a mixer. He's parading.
He's the unknown mixer is what he is.
Well, I'm a cement mixer, a churning urn of burning funk.
Yeah, Ringo's Mad Day Out. We get another great bit. This is one of the many bits they always show. It's Ringo's chivalry coat bit, where a woman
so
is
funny. Rule of threes, Tony. The first one's covered. The second one's covered. The third one, she gone.
She gone with a very funny Three Stooges kind of cut where they cut like in the middle of the action from a medium to a wide, and then they lose some frames in there too. It looks like it's jumpy. It's jumpy like a Three Stooges Little Rascals thing. Yep. It's funny, man. It's a funny bit. So then Ringo gets picked up by the cops, or the bobbies, if you will. And then we find ourselves at the police station.
Ringo, Star, I've got a show to do. I'm on in a few minutes. You've got to let me go. I'm Ringo.
Yeah, that's what they all say these days. Look, I don't care who you are. You can say that for the stipendiary.
Grandpa is also busted for hawking Beatle autographs, and he gets, picked up by a bobby. So
he's an original defund the police guy. He knows all coppers are villains.
They seem all right to me.
Sure, that's what I want you to think. All coppers are villains.
Would you two like a cup of tea?
You See? Sly villains.
I think Grandpa's the original Bernie Sanders.
Oh, yeah. He kind of is. They're the same age. So.
Yes, 100%.
Who knew Wilford Brimley was so woke? Oh, I'm sorry. Wilford Bramble. I'm sorry. Sorry. Ow. That buzzer hurt. By the way, for those listening, those buzzers hurt. When they buzz us, that hurts.
They suck every time. They're attached to our heart.
Just a trim. Don't buzz me, all right?
There's some fun stuff. I love how Grandpa is talking out of the side of his mouth to Ringo as if no one can hear him. Yeah. That to me is some wonderful physical comedy. And there's that bit where he goes on this tirade, that is very like...
A nation once again.
A nation once again.
Oh, get Lloyd George over there next to the mechanic and the cloth cap while I sort this lot out, will you?
The sergeant says, get Lloyd George out of here.
Here we have the first British politician to go from very humble origins to number 10 Downing Street. He never forgot what it was to be poor, and he had a burning desire to improve the lives of working-class people.
So Grandpa's siding with a liberal against the kind of fascist communist cop.
He's a fucking king mixer, yo.
King mixer.
He's a king mixer.
I love it. I love it, man. Yeah, it's great. It is great. Yeah, I mean, it does speak to the, he's Irish or whatever, right? So it does speak to kind of like the troubles that are coming ahead in like 10 years-ish, Less than.
Would you agree that we should give Ireland back to the Irish, or would you agree that just be a version?
I agree with version. But one of the great things is that he goes on this lefty tirade about how the cops are the worst, and then the cop offers him a cup of tea.
It's so sweet. Fuck the police.
The timing on that is brilliant.
It's great.
Yeah, man. Yeah, so then Grandpa escapes, and they're like, hey, you forgot your photographs.
You forgot your pictures.
All right, you paid assassins. Johnny McCartney will give you a run for your turkey.
Hey, you forgot your photographs.
So Grandpa's escape is it's scored to the Hard Day's Night, the George Martin orchestra version, which has like that.
The Take 5 version.
And they're back at the studio. Here's a cinematography thing. I love there's a scene in the control room where it's a single shot of the two monitors. And so you get to see Grandpa and Victor Spinetti, the director, on separate tubes, on separate TVs. That's brilliant. That's cool, man.
It's a great shot.
Yeah. Then we get Can't Buy Me Love Part 2, kind of a Keystone Cops Capers bit.
Can't buy me love.
It is a very noises off type of thing. It is.
Charlie's aunt.
Yes, it's extraordinarily funny. Even if you hate comedy, you can't argue that the end of A Hard Day's Night is brilliantly choreographed.
It's fun. Yeah. Now, if I may, we're hearing Can't Buy Me Love again. To me, this would be a great place to just throw I'll Cry Instead on there. I just think, why not?
Yeah, or maybe Sleep Ditch.
Sleep Deek, TJ. Get it right.
Sleep Dick. But we begin a period of reiterating Beatles songs right now that I think this part of the movie is let's sell the album for United Artists and Parlophone in the UK.
All right, sure. But we've already heard Can't Buy Me Love, and I'll Cry Instead is on both of those records.
You're right.
So I win.
Tony wins that
one. We finally get it, though. We're back at the studio. This is the performance. This is it. This is the Beatles performing in front of a crowd. Phil Collins, a young Phil Collins is in the crowd.
Phil Collins almost couldn't do the show. You know why?
Why is that?
Because he asked the director he needed just one more night.
Please give me one more night. Give me one more night.
This to me really is where I connected with Let It Be, where they're ending with a performance in front of an audience. only Hard Day's Night's the beginning and Let It Be's the ending. I feel like the end of A Hard Day's Night, especially since Get Back was released in 2020 and Let It Be in earlier this year, I feel like the end of A Hard Day's Night feels like a prologue more than the ending of a film. It's like this is the beginning and you're going to see the end in 6 years. Maybe I'm overreading it, but I feel like the end of A Hard Day's Night feels inexorably linked to the end of Let It Be.
I love that take, man. I hadn't thought of it. That's cool. Yeah, it's cool. Because, it's them performing songs in a studio.
Yeah.
But this time with an audience. I mean, it is a theater, but it feels like, it's set up to feel like a TV studio.
Have we ever heard the original versions of them performing in that studio? Because all we hear are the overdubs and the studio recordings. I've never heard bootlegs of them singing those songs for the studio for the end without miming the recorded versions.
No. Yeah, that would be a very peculiar listening, I would think, because they have to play to a track. So they're going to half play, and maybe the drums is all you'd hear. I wonder if their guitars are even plugged in.
Yeah, maybe.
That said, there's a bit after If I Fell where Paul does a run on his bass, and you can hear his bass faintly. So it did feel like maybe it was plugged in, and they are kind of playing along, maybe at a lower volume. Hey, that'd be interesting.
Well, and at the end of If I Fell, when they do a bit where John and Paul are giving notes to Ringo. No, do it more like this. Paul starts playing I Saw Her Standing There on the
Is that what that is?
To me,
that's what that is.
You know, the bit, the more bang.
Okay, I couldn't. You got a good ear for that. I just heard a random thing.
Tony, what is the music on the transistor radio when the old rich Republican guy snatches it and turns it off? Is that the Beatles playing? I've never been able to find out. What is that 8 to 10 second piece of music?
Then we'll have that thing off as well, thank you.
Yeah, I don't know what that music is. My guess is it's like an outtake from the George Martin orchestra stuff,
Right.
Or maybe just library music that they had on hand back then, like pop music from 1963.
Because if it were the Beatles, it would have been included on something, but I can't find information. Maybe our loyal listeners can tell us what is the Ringo transistor music on the train.
I mean, I did a little bit of Googling, and according to a user on the famed Steve Hoffman forum, the author Richie Unterberger, in his book The Unreleased Beatles Music and Film, says, the late A Hard Day's Night producer Walter Shenson said that the 6-second snatch of instrumental rock heard in the scene where Ringo whips out a transistor radio on a train was actually played by the Beatles. If so, it probably would have been recorded between February 25th and March 1st, during the first batch of sessions for the LP A Hard Day's Night. This brief snippet sounds like such generic British invasion music, however, that it shouldn't be assumed without a shadow of a doubt that it's the Beatles themselves. So, the mystery remains. If you've got any tips, hit us up at untitledbeatlespod@gmail.com.
All right, let's knock out these songs, man.
Yes.
They start with Tell Me Why on Quaaludes.
Slow. Slow and low. Let yourself glow. It's a lower key.
Yeah, it does take away from the general excitement usually involved with this song, but I love that they start with this. This is the only fucking time they'll ever play this song live, and it's not even live, it's them miming, but yeah, they never played this song in concert, so this is the only time we'll ever see them do it, because the only time they ever actually played it was at Abbey Road, EMI.
And Tony, let's be cool. John wrote it to be a Motown girl group song, and it's a fucking great song. Tell me why. I mean, we'll talk about this when we do the album in the next few weeks, but it's very difficult to look at that album and not say it's one of the best 3 albums they ever made, and Tell Me Why is the reason why. This album is a sterling pop rock album, every song.
Indeed. We get an encore of If I Fell.
Slower
again.
If I give my heart to you, I must be sure from the very...
John has a Band-Aid on his left pinky. continuity. Then we get to see I Should Have Known Better, this time them in a proper setting, playing them with their actual gear, like Ringo's got a drum set. We see that Grandpa is handcuffed to Shake.
And then Grandpa disappears from Shake.
Yes, he does. It's curious that Grandpa is in seat number 9. Did you notice that?
What number? Number 9.
Number 9.
Number 9.
Number 9.
Number 9.
Number 9. We see that during She Loves You, which is great to see. See them do She Loves You.
It's so good. But Tony, why? Let me ask you, why don't they do a new version? Why is She Loves You still the same 63 master with the edits? I don't understand that.
So you want the German version is what you're telling me.
Sie liebt dich is a better version than She Loves You. 100%.
They did. Yeah, they had to re-record it. They played it that many more times.
Oh,
yeah,
Sie liebt dich.
tested.
Unes kleines grau. I've known that since 79. No apologies.
Well, this song, what I love about the cinematography here, and yeah, I sound pretentious talking about the cinematography, but this is great. It's all these snap zooms. We keep seeing like the kids. We're seeing the reaction. We're seeing Beatlemania. He's capturing that.
Yes.
So it's not just about the Beatles. Right now it's about the kids. It's about you in the seats paying for this movie. There's 4 cuts to the same crying girl. They nicknamed her in the edit room the White Rabbit. So She Loves You is kind of that's the big song, it's the biggest hit still ever, really. I mean, from the early years, that was the one that they're screaming at football games and all that. It's iconic. That's what closes this set at the theater. When the Beatles race off into a helicopter, it says BEA on it, and then it's written in a different font, TLES. Beatles.
In my version, the MASH theme plays at this point.
Well, TJ, the helicopter takes off, and it ends with the Beatles littering, throwing all those counterfeit 8x10s from the helicopter to the ground. We're still seeing remnants of them pop up. I just took a sip of Evian last week, and I saw Ringo's nose, just a portion of it from this 8x10. Yeah. What song closes it? I didn't write it down.
A Hard Day's Night closes it and then goes into the credits.
It's been a hard day's night, and I've been working like a dog. It's been a hard day's night. I should be sleeping like a log, but when I get home to you, I want to on your hand off the parade. Get rid of those things.
A Hard Day's Night closes it, but why didn't they use Please Please Me, or I Saw Her Standing There, or I Want to Hold Your Hand? There are plenty of songs missing from the era that they pulled from. And again, having loved and lived through the 99 Yellow Submarine song track, there's never been a Hard Day's Night song track with I Want to Be Your Man and with Don't Bother Me.
Yeah.
It's very,
She
and
Loves
with
You,
Am I
All My
Loving
Lovin'.
and She Loves You. It's very interesting. The one thing I will say, Tony, is I don't believe there is a better remnant of the Beatles than this film. However you watch, or the 84 VHS or the 2012 Criterion edition, this film is a document of the Beatles, of the 60s, of the movement that the 60s was. My favorite comedy of all time is a comedy guy is Caddyshack, but A Hard Day's Night's probably my 1B. No movie makes me happier than this film.
Yeah, it's the best of their films. The screenplay is sharp, packs a bunch of laughs still to this day. It's visually compelling. The cinematography is playful. It's inventive. There's jump cuts. There's breaking the fourth wall. There's some social commentary. You get a peek behind the curtain of the swinging fucking London scene. It's titillating. It's sexual. You know, just the receptionist putting her high heels on. John's reference to the cocaine. And to answer your question, I believe they had to close with Hard Day's Night because that's what you want the audience humming on the way out to the record store to buy the album of the same name. They had to do it. And it's a great song.
Tony, it's one of their finest. And again, this entire movie was a guise for United Artists to have a soundtrack album in the U.S. and North America.
Exactly.
And God bless you, UK. God bless you, Europe. But United Artists knew their money would be recouped in the States. And the only singles United Artists could release were singles with the George Martin Orchestra. But the album, A Hard Day's Night soundtrack, which preceded something new, it's the only place you could get A Hard Day's Night, and I saw her standing there on a Beatles album in the U.S.
That's pretty wild, man. Yeah. I definitely think it surpasses its initial idea of just being a quick cash grab exploitation film. And I think Roger Ebert said it well when he said that it doesn't condescend to the audience. The audience is in on this. We're with the Beatles, and that's why we love this record to this day and this film to this day.
Tony, it is emblematic of the power of the Beatles. And the one thing I'll end with saying is all respect to Alan Owen, who without question deserves more credit than he's ever received. This was not screenwriter. This was not improvised or ad-libbed. Alan Owen made such a difference in how the Beatles are represented in the early 60s. He's often lost in the Beatles shuffle, and maybe he's our 8th Beatle. Stay tuned, March of 25, if one of us ain't dead.
Thanks to our producer, Casey. Thank you. If you like this, like and subscribe. We're on the Patreon. We've got merch at tpublic.com. We are the Untitled Beatles Podcast. I'm Tony.
And on behalf of Tony, I'm TJ, and all the other Beatles podcasts can SUCK it because we're better and we're stronger and we're manlier and we're womanlier. And to all the other Beatles podcasts, give peace a pass.
Untitled Beatles Podcast. Like and subscribe.